and look at ordinary language analysis. Ordinary language philosophy, lots of different ordinary language analysis, etc. Right? By movement, by school. So you speak English, okay, but English has lots of different forms of life. You learn a particular language, like, if you're going to be a nurse, or even a particular type of nurse. If you're in the neurosciences, there's 250 subspecialties in the neurosciences, as I understand it. And in fact, what's strange is some neuroscientists in one specialty can't even speak to the neuroscientists in another specialty because their languages are not shared because of the special nature of what they're investigating. So technical, right? Think of that as technical. What else is interesting about it? But if you trace this back to Dewey, what you end up seeing is that this is all part of what Dewey is writing about as well. So it's really where things have spread as a result of Hegel's philosophy being explored even further and further, especially as Americans. Let me move on to another philosopher that's a follower of Dewey, and that's Richard Rorty. In fact, let me pick a video for him.
If you call yourself a pragmatist philosopher,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Pragmatists say we should stop thinking in Greek terms, not think in terms of a distinction between appearance and reality, or between mind and body, or between intellect and sense, but think of ourselves in the wake of Darwin as what nature called clever animals who find cleverer and cleverer ways of talking about what's going on, and clever ways of dealing with what's going on, but never do anything like, penetrating beyond the world of the senses, or penetrating beyond appearance to reality, or ascending from the body to the mind, or anything of that sort. And much of pragmatism is just the same kind of criticism as you get in Heidegger's criticism of what he called the ontotheological tradition. I think it was unfortunate that pragmatism became thought of as a theory or definition of truth. I think it would have been better if the pragmatists had said, we can tell you about justification, but we can't tell you about truth. There's nothing to be said about it. And as we know how we justify beliefs, we know that the adjective true is the word we apply to the beliefs that we've justified. We know that a belief can be true without being justified. That's about all we know about truth. And justification is relative to an audience and to a range of truth candidates. Truth isn't relative to anything. Just because it isn't relative to anything, there's nothing to be said about it. And truth with a capital T is sort of like God. There's not much you can say about God. That's why theologians talk about ineffability. Contemporary pragmatists tend to say the word true is indefinable, but none the worse for that. We know how to use it. We don't have to define it.
If you define it in the Nietzschean term, there are no facts, there are only interpretations.
Yes, that gives the general pragmatist idea that no description, or if you like, no interpretation, is closer to reality than any other. Some of them are more useful for some purposes than others, but that's about all you can say. And Nietzschean perspectivism, which says, you can't rise above interpretations and get to facts, or dig down below interpretations and get to facts, is substantially the same thing as I meant before when I said the pragmatists try to get rid of the reality-appearance distinction. I mean, the Greek idea is that at a certain point in the process of inquiry, you come to rest because you've reached the goal. And the pragmatists are saying, we haven't the slightest idea what it would be like to reach the goal. The idea that the aim of inquiry is, conformity to correspondence to reality, or seeing the face of God, or substituting facts for interpretations, is one that we just can't make any use of. All we really know about is how to exchange justifications of our beliefs and desires with other human beings, and as far as we can see, that will be what human life will be like forever. So, pragmatists regard the Platonist attempt to get away from time into eternity, or get away from conversation into certainty, as a product of an age of human history where life on Earth was so desperate and it seemed so unlikely that life could ever be better that people took refuge in another world. Pragmatism comes along with things like the French Revolution, industrial technology, all the things that made the 19th century believe in progress. When you think that the aim of life is to make things better for our descendants rather than to reach outside of history and time, it alters your sense of what philosophy is good for. In the Platonist and theistic epoch, the point of philosophy was to get you out of this mess into a better place. And
God
the realm of Platonic ideas, the contemplative life, something like that. And the reaction against this Greek Christian pursuit of blessedness through union with a natural order is to say there isn't any natural order, but there is the possibility of a better life for our great-great-great-grandchildren. That's enough to give you, all the meaning or inspiration or whatever that you could use.
Interesting, I hope. He's terrific. There's lots of opportunities. He did die, let's see if I can do the... give you an idea of his life. By the way, he's one of the reasons I brought him up was because Dewey kind of got eclipsed for a while. He was famous, of course, in his own day. In fact, he was giving a lecture in New York City when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and when the news arrived. And so he, of course, adapted his lecture to the news. Kind of interesting. That video is actually on the web, but Dewey was brought back into academic interest by Richard Rorty, and so that's why I mentioned him. By the way, some of his books are some of the absolute best prose that I'm achieving. Our Country, a little book, but absolutely beautiful. His interest is leftist thought, so he is a liberal. So if you're interested in that, he's an excellent example to look at. His belief is that doing harm to other people is the worst thing that we do. So, kind of an interesting approach to philosophy. Let's see, who else? See if I talked about all of that. I have Derrida and deconstruction up for our next class, so that will be Wednesday. But I do want to mention that Quine is our example of neo-pragmatism, and It is, I think, kind of interesting to think how Quine, as a mathematical logician, does get into pragmatism through that method. Remember, through the course, we've started off with, at least once we got to Aristotle, we talked about the idea that there was the A, the E, the I, and the O type statements, where here you would have all of the subject set is predicate, the E statement, no of the subject set is predicate, the I statement, some of the subject set is predicate, and some of the subject set is not predicate. These are the Aristotelian statement types that we still today can say describe the types of statements that can be either true or false. Remember, they could get more and more complex, but basically you could whittle them down to, if you're going to say that's true or that's false, you're basically saying that members of this set are completely in this set, no members of the set are in this set, some members of this set are in this set, and some members of this set are not in that set. That's basically what structures a true or false statement. And as a result, we have this set of statements are considered analytic, and this set of statements are considered synthetic. So, for example, these are basically definitional. Once I learned those, I've learned the definitions of those sets. All horses are animals, right, and so on, and all the other characteristics. Basically describing those that way. If, in a synthetic sense, though, I'm talking about a particular animal, where I'm describing it in a way that I'm understanding it at this moment, and it's not something that I could have understood by definition, but instead specific to this particular individual, then we're calling that new news. A synthetic statement is new information. Analytic is old information about things, right? But remember when we moved on and talked about David Hume, we came to add two other characteristics of these. I'll get rid of this. And said that we have a priori and a posteriori. Information. So this is information that I have prior to an experience, and this is information that I have after having that experience, right? And in analyzing these, and especially with Kant's help, we come to realize that Hume's critique is to say that metaphysics requires an a priori synthetic information that we can't actually have. I can't have new information about an event that hasn't happened yet. By the way, in the quantum theory of Stuart Hameroff, in a sense, because our brains are quantum computers, we are able to use our brains in a non-local sense to some extent, and that enables us to, in a sense, go back into the past or into the future and understand something from that point of view, and then return to the now and actually maybe have an a priori synthetic knowledge of something. But let's not dawdle on that, because none of that's all hypothetical. I don't think we actually have proof of any of that. But with this particular situation, you'd see there's a big difference here between the analytic and the synthetic, and we have these kinds of experiences, I should so I'll just use y instead. So we have those, no problem. Kant had to figure out, well, how do we get out of this? And he argued that, well, something is obviously affecting our synthetic experience, and that gives us, of course, the categories of understanding, the categories of judgment, and things of that nature. That was Kant's ability to skip over this dilemma and give us a transcendental understanding of how the human mind works. And remember now, with thanks to Hegel and his contemporaries, that moved on to culture and language, so that we see things through our languages, etc. Well, now as we're moving into pragmatism, we still end up with this dichotomy between a sense that there's reality out there in the analytic knowledge and our current experience here. What Quine interestingly does in his book, Two Dogmas of Empiricism, right, and here's your two dogmas, right, is turn around and point out that analytic sentences, logically, can equate to synthetic statements. How so? How do we do that? Well, if I say some kind of statement that for anything you pick, this is the case, that turns out to be equivalent to saying that it's not the case that there exists something that is not that. For anything you pick, everything is this. That's equivalent to saying it's not the case that there is something that is